Malik Carter slowly turned his shiny black sports car onto a quiet street in the suburbs. The sunlight hit the smooth surface, making the car look like a moving mirror. At 35 years old, Malik was everything people called successful. He built his life from the ground up, coming from a tough neighborhood where chances were hard to find. Now, he wore expensive suits that fit him perfectly, but even with all the success, he carried memories he couldn't forget. He remembered the long nights of hard work, the people who doubted him, and the looks that silently said, "You don't belong here." Today, he was driving one of his favorite cars from his personal collection. Each one was more than just a car. It was proof of his journey and everything he had earned through struggle and determination. But what Malik didn't know was that this quiet drive would soon become something very different. In just a few minutes, he would face a situation that would test his calm, his past, and how the world still judges people based on how they look, not who they are. The road ahead was quiet, with only the low sound of Malik's engine filling the air. Then suddenly, flashing blue lights appeared in his rearview mirror. A loud siren broke the silence. Malik's jaw tightened as he slowly pulled the car over to the side of the road. He had been through this before. Even though he had done nothing wrong, that heavy feeling of being judged returned like an old scar that never really healed. The police officer stepped out of the car. He looked to be in his 40s, with a serious face and one hand resting near his holster. His eyes scanned Malik's car as if it didn't belong to him. When he reached the window, he said sharply, "License and registration." Malik didn't argue. He quietly handed over the documents. The officer flipped through the papers, his expression turning more suspicious. "This car registered to you?" he asked. "Yes, officer," Malik replied, keeping his voice calm. But the officer still looked unsure. Without another word, he walked back to his cruiser, leaving Malik sitting there, waiting and worrying about what would happen next. Malik sat in silence as the minutes passed slowly. Each second felt like an hour. The officer finally came back, but his face looked even colder than before. "Step out of the car," he ordered. Malik's stomach turned, but he moved carefully. He kept his hands visible and stepped out calmly, standing beside his car. The officer didn't say much. He started walking around Malik's car, looking it over like something had to be wrong with it. Cars drove by, and some people slowed down to stare. Malik felt embarrassed. He had worked hard for everything he owned, yet he was being treated like a criminal. "What do you do for a living?" the officer asked, his voice filled with doubt. "I own a shipping business," Malik replied. "Shipping, huh?" the officer repeated, raising an eyebrow. "That pays for cars like this?" "Yes, officer, it does." But the officer didn't look convinced. He kept circling the car like he was trying to catch Malik in a lie. Then he muttered, "Wait here," and walked back toward his cruiser, leaving Malik standing there with his heart pounding. Inside his car, Malik's phone buzzed. It was a message from one of his workers. "Boss, everything okay?" Malik quickly typed back, "Delayed, handle the shipment." He tried to stay calm, but inside he was boiling. The officer returned holding a paper in his hand. "This says you own several vehicles," he said. "Mind explaining how a guy like you can afford that?" Malik felt a sharp wave of anger, but he stayed cool. "I started from nothing, built up my company step by step. These cars are part of that success." The officer stared at him with a face full of doubt. He stepped in closer and said quietly, "Guys like you don't usually make it here without doing something shady." Malik's eyes narrowed. "What exactly are you trying to say, officer?" Instead of answering, the officer called for backup. Soon, another police car pulled up. A younger officer stepped out, looking unsure. Malik watched as the two officers spoke quietly. He could feel their judgment heavy in the air, as if his success didn't belong to him. The younger officer walked up to Malik, his tone a little softer. "Sir, we're going to need to ask you a few more questions. It's just protocol." Malik nodded, but his eyes drifted to the older officer. He noticed him poking around inside his car without permission. "Is this really necessary?" Malik asked. The older officer didn't answer. Instead, he muttered, "We'll see what we find." The younger one looked uneasy, but asked, "Do you have any proof that you own a business, Mr. Carter?" Malik reached into his glove box and pulled out a folder. He handed it over. Inside were contracts, business licenses, and proof of ownership. The younger officer flipped through the papers. A look of surprise spread across his face. "This all checks out," he said. But the older officer still wasn't done. "Still doesn't explain all the cars. Something just doesn't add up." Malik could feel his patience thinning. He had done everything right, but somehow he was still being treated like a criminal just for being successful. Things got worse when a tow truck showed up. "We're impounding the vehicle until we can verify everything," the older officer said, sounding almost proud. Malik stepped forward, trying to stay calm. "This isn't right. I gave you all the paperwork you asked for." The officer smirked. "We'll see about that." Malik's jaw tightened. He wasn't just angry, he was tired. Tired of always having to prove himself. Without saying another word, Malik pulled out his phone and made a call. His voice stayed calm. "I'd like to report an incident," he said. Just a few minutes later, a black SUV with dark windows pulled up. Out stepped a woman in a sharp suit, Malik's attorney. She marched right over to the officers. "Why is my client being harassed?" she asked strongly. The older officer stumbled over his words, trying to come up with a reason. Malik spoke clearly. "Would you have treated me this way if I didn't look like this?" The younger officer looked down at his shoes. He didn't say a word, but his silence said everything. Malik's lawyer stood her ground, demanding answers. The older officer struggled to explain, but Malik wasn't about to let it slide. "Officer, would you have treated me like this if I looked different?" Malik asked firmly. The younger officer avoided Malik's eyes, clearly uncomfortable. Then Malik opened his phone and showed pictures. "That fleet of cars you're so suspicious about? Here they are." He swiped through photos of his company's cars, sleek sports cars all lined up, used for business promotions. The older officer was speechless, caught off guard by the proof. Finally, the younger officer spoke up, his voice apologetic. "I'm sorry, sir. This should not have happened." Malik's lawyer nodded. The older officer's actions were reported, and he was suspended while they looked into what happened. The younger officer seemed to learn something that day, promising to treat people differently in the future. Malik didn't stop there. He used what happened to raise awareness about unfair treatment and racial bias, speaking out so others wouldn't face the same thing. After the incident, Malik didn't just go back to business as usual. He knew this wasn't just about him. It was about a bigger problem that many people face every day. He started speaking at community meetings, sharing his story honestly and clearly. Malik wanted others to understand how success doesn't always protect you from being judged unfairly. Even though he had worked hard and earned everything, he still faced prejudice. But instead of giving up, Malik used his experience to push for change. He also began mentoring young people, helping them believe in themselves and work toward their dreams no matter the obstacles. Malik's business grew stronger because he kept fighting, not just for himself, but for others who didn't have a voice. His message was simple. Dignity and persistence can break down walls of bias. Success alone might not stop unfair treatment, but standing tall and speaking out can make a difference. This wasn't just Malik's story. It was a call for fairness and respect for everyone. Malik's story isn't just about one man's fight. It's a reminder that many people face unfair treatment every day because of how they look or where they come from. Success can help, but it doesn't erase prejudice. What really matters is standing strong, keeping your dignity, and speaking up for what's right. Malik's journey shows us that even when the world judges you, you can still rise above it. He turned a painful experience into a chance to teach others and fight for change. If this story moved you, share it with others. Let's spread the message that fairness and respect should be for everyone. Together, we can make a world where everyone gets a fair chance, no matter what. Malik's fight didn't end that day. He used what happened to shine a light on how racial bias still affects people, even those who have worked hard and made it. He spoke at community events and shared his story in the media, hoping to open people's eyes to unfair treatment. Malik wanted others to know that success doesn't always mean safety from prejudice. Instead, it showed how important it is to stay strong and keep pushing forward. His business kept growing, but more importantly, Malik became a role model for others facing similar struggles. He helped young people believe they could rise above bias and build their own success. Malik's story reminds us all, fighting injustice takes courage and perseverance, and every voice matters. By standing tall and speaking out, we can help make a fairer world for everyone. Malik's story is not just about one man's experience. It shows the everyday struggles many face because of unfair judgments and stereotypes. No matter how much success you have, it doesn't always protect you from being treated differently. But Malik's calm and courage proved that standing up to injustice can make a difference. He didn't just fight for himself, he fought to change how others are seen and treated. By sharing his story, Malik inspired many to believe in themselves and to speak out when things aren't right. His journey teaches us that true strength is in never giving up, even when the odds are against you. Malik's example reminds us all to stand tall and keep pushing for fairness and respect for everyone. If Malik's story moved you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with your friends and family so more people can learn about how unfair treatment still happens today. By liking and subscribing to Stories Beyond Shades, you help spread stories that matter, stories that show the real struggles and the strength it takes to overcome them. Malik's journey shows us all that no matter where we come from, we can fight back against injustice with courage and dignity. Remember, every voice counts when it comes to standing up for what's right. Together, we can build a world where everyone is treated fairly, no matter their background. Keep watching for more stories that open eyes and inspire change.